see. All right. Michael, frequently with these situations, people have a lot of debt associated with their automobiles. And for example, and these are debts to the cities or the state. For example, parking tickets. If somebody has substantial parking tickets because of their work or something, what happens to those parking ticket liabilities in a bankruptcy situation?
It depends a little bit on the type of case you file, but parking tickets in general are viewed as another debt. It may not be discharged, but at least you can get relief from whatever the city or the state is trying to do. So then once you file bankruptcy, they would not be allowed to boot your car or impound the car or try and take you to court and make you pay the fines. Now, if you're in Chapter 7, once you're at the end of that case, the parking tickets are not going to be discharged. However, in Chapter 13, you can get away with paying maybe as little as 5 or 10% of what's owed on the tickets, and certainly protect the driver's license the whole time you're in bankruptcy as well. But get out of the Chapter 13 at the end of the case not owing thousands in parking tickets anymore. So we frequently have people who have had their licenses suspended due to the parking tickets or perhaps a car accident in their life. And as soon as we get the case filed, we just need to notify the Secretary of State. And for the most part, the driving privileges are continued, or they're allowed to drive again. And that's very important if you have someone who has a commercial driver's license, a trucker or a bus operator or something. They certainly need their driver's license in a hurry to be able to, cover their other bills and pay their rent and everything. So bankruptcy is very powerful for that.
Okay. And of course, some people do a lot of traveling on the interstates. We've got the toll booths, the toll charges for interstate highways, and also I-Pass bills. What about those? How are they treated?
Similar to parking tickets. So I just want to point out any sort of criminal penalty, such as a moving violation, is not generally handled by bankruptcy, and you can't stop the prosecutors or the enforcement agencies from doing anything in that case. But the tolls, any sort of I-Pass bill, that sort of stuff, similar to a parking ticket, you don't have to pay it in full if you're in Chapter 13. If you're in Chapter 7, at least you can protect your driver's license again and try to work out something before you get out of the Chapter 7. So hopefully you can continue being able to drive.
I see. Okay. Tina, let's revisit the other major debt most people have, many people have, and that's the car loan. In a Chapter 7, what happens to the car loan situation again?
Okay, well, in a car loan situation in Chapter 7, the debtor has a choice of whether they want to continue making the payments on the car and keep the car, or they could surrender the car in Chapter 7 as well. So if their payments are too high and they cannot, afford the monthly payments, they could always have the option of giving the car back without any liability.
So in a Chapter 7, they're not going to keep that car?
Sometimes they will keep the car. People.
The debt is not going to be discharged and they keep the car.
If the debt is reaffirmed, they could keep their car, but they'll still have the liability.
Right.
If they decide to surrender the car, they give the car back, and they'll have no more liability. Okay? Right. That's the Chapter 7. Mm-hmm.
What about Chapter 13? How does that have an impact on these auto loans?
It has a big impact because a lot of times we find that our clients or people who file bankruptcy have really high interest rates in the first place. So basically, a Chapter 13 could do a lot for a car loan. If the car was purchased more than 910 days prior to the filing, we could just set up the plan so the value of the car gets repaid, which could be very significant for some people. Again, the 910-day rule comes in. So we have to see when the contract was signed, and that's most contracts. Maybe.
How does that rule apply now?
The 910 days. So if a person walks in today and files a bankruptcy, we'd have to count 910 days back and see when they signed that contract. Okay. If it was more than 910 days ago, we could do what's called a cram down, right? And we could look at the value of the car today and pay the market value.
I see. And
also pay a much lower interest rate. If the car was purchased within that 910 days, we have to pay the contract rate, but we could cram down the interest. So we could have a person that has, whatever car payment. If they had a 17% interest rate, we could, bring it down to a more reasonable market value or a more reasonable interest rate. Right now, about 5%.